What's up everyone? Welcome to Mimoth Interactive's course on a color matcher game. The objective of this game is to collect as much targets as you can, and there's a twist here. The target must have the same color of your player. So you need to hit the space bar to change your color between blue, actually it is an aqua color, it's a cyan color, and change between that tone of blue and red to collect as much targets as you can, because if you collide with a target with a different color, then the game restarts. Okay, then the game is over. You have to be very careful with your movement. Sometimes a target might appear right in front of you, to collect as much as you can and wait for the game to be over. Once it is, then it's going to say your final score. In my case it was 17. If I press R, the game will restart again. So this course is targeted for beginners. So if this is your first time making a game, if you just started learning recently, or if you want to learn more about GameMaker, and maybe you're just bored and you want to train a new skill of yours, then this course will work just fine for you. Okay, so there will be around 1 hour of lessons, and I'm going to show the features of this game very carefully. Okay, I'm going to talk about collision, to talk about movement, and talk about image blending, so you learn things separately until you reach the final game. My name is Glauco Pires, and I've been working in the game industry since 2010. I've made lots of games in different technologies and tools like GameMaker, of course. I've worked with Unity, with Flash, with HTML5, with Unreal. So I have some experience that I'd like to share with you in separate topics, like I just told you. Okay, so if you don't have GameMaker Studio yet, you can go to the Yo-Yo Games website to make an account. You have to activate a free license, and after you're done with that, you can download GameMaker Studio, install it, log in, and we should be ready to go with creating our game project. So in the next lesson, we're going to do this. Alright, I hope you're excited to start this, and I see you in the next video. Once you open GameMaker Studio, you should go to the New tab, located here, and start setting some things for your project. We need to first set the project directory, which is the folder where your game is going to be located. So every game is separated in a project, and that's why it is a good practice to create a projects folder, or maybe you can use workspaces if you want. Don't just drop in your user folder or in the documents one, as things tend to be messy because you're going to mix with other things. So let's make a project one. And as for the project name, we're going to use color matcher. After that, we just hit create and wait for GameMaker to open for us, right? Where this very simple interface is going to appear. So we have a few things to check here. First of all, this thing in the middle here on the top portion of the GameMaker window is the toolbar. You have a certain amount of tools and options you can click and use, so you can save your project, you can create a build for your project, run the game, or maybe create things like backgrounds and paths. So there are several options here, but the ones that matter the most are basically save and run the game. These are the ones that we're going to use throughout this quick course. Okay, now more important than this toolbar is taking a look on this this group of folders here at the left portion of the editor. Okay, so this window here is the hierarchy view. Okay, you're going to have several game elements set in a hierarchy, just like it works in your Windows computer, or if you have a Mac computer, it works that way as well. You have a root folder which contains several other folders on it, and each of these folders you can open and see files or other subfolders. So you have elements like sprites, you have sounds, backgrounds, you have lots of them here, but there are three that matters the most. Okay, we have sprites, which we're going to look shortly what they are. We also have objects, and finally we have rooms. These are the three most important ones. You have to think of them all the time, okay? But don't worry, this is not hard. This is actually very simple to understand. First of all, let's go to the sprites folder. We're going to right click here and select create sprite. Let's maximize this window so you can see it better. So what is a sprite? A sprite is kind of an image. It is a visual representation of things that you're going to add to your game. So maybe you want to add trees, you want to add rocks, or you want to make a player, you want to make maybe a monster that shouts at the player, maybe tries to punch the player. So whatever is a visual, whatever is related to images or animations is a sprite. Okay, so we will start by making the sprite for our player. We're going to use the name player, but before that name, we're going to use spr underscore. So the full name of the sprite that we're creating is spr underscore player. Why do we start with spr? This is a common practice in GameMaker to avoid any name conflicts that might happen. Okay, since we're going to make a player object in a few minutes from now, then we wouldn't be able to name that object player because we would already have one thing that is named player. So we start by adding these three words here to differentiate things, and also this is going to make it easier when we are writing code to reference sprites or the objects that we create, or fonts, for example. So okay, we start with spr underscore player. Now if you have a nice image, if you have maybe a spaceship, or if you have a funny smiley, you can click on load sprite to open it from a file. But since we are not going to rely on any external images, let's just click on edit sprite. Okay, so here we're going to click on create a new sprite, and we need to set the size of that sprite. Okay, so the width is how many pixels you have in the horizontal axis, and the height how many pixels in the vertical axis. We'll just keep it on 32 by 32, so this is a square sprite. We now hit OK. So we have a little image here. If we were to create an animation, we would have a sequence of images. So it would look something like this. Okay. So internally, if you ordered GameMaker to play an animation, it would swap images like this. So it gives the illusion of movement. But we're going to use only one image, right? And this rectangle here, you're going to see 4 gray cubes here, 4 gray squares. One is on a lighter tone of gray, another one a darker tone of gray. But this is just telling us that the image is transparent. It doesn't actually contain these squares. So you can double click that image to open this very simple editor here, and you can click on the magnifying glass to zoom in this image. So if you have ever used Microsoft Paint or maybe Photoshop or GIMP, then it should be very easy for you. But if you didn't, don't worry. Here on the left you have a few tools that you can use to draw anything you want here in this how can I say, canvas. Okay, so you can use a pencil to draw straight lines like this. You can use the line tool to have more control when drawing lines. You have a polygon tool as well, so you can draw different shapes. You have rectangle, you have ellipse tool, you have round rectangle. So you have a few basic tools here that you can use to make a very simple sprite. And on the right you have a color picker, so you have different colors that you can select and give some life to your player. Okay, so to draw this player, let's start with a round rectangle. Actually, let's use an ellipse. Okay, we're going to make this a little circle guy. So now if you want to give a better color to this ellipse, you can select 2 different colors here. The left one is the color of the outline, and the right one is the color of the fill. And you can change these colors by right clicking or left clicking here. So if I want red to be the outline, I left click on red. If I want blue to be the fill, I click on right. Okay, so if you draw a circle, it is going to look like this. However, since this game is about changing colors, so we're going to change the color of our player, we're going to have targets with different colors, we are going to use black and white. And why is that? The colors is going to work on a blend. It's like we are applying a tint. So if we have a white color as the fill, whatever color we set as the blend is going to be the color that is going to appear. So white is like the wild card that if we apply a tint, that white color will become that color of the tint. And black is like a color that doesn't blend with anything. If it is black, it will never change to any other color. So you're going to see this when we are going to to change the code and make that blending happen. But anyway, let's just keep black as the outline and white as the fill. We select the ellipse tool, we left click here on the top, and we simply drag it to look like this. And to make the eyes and mouth of the player, let's just select the pencil tool here, this little pencil here, and we're going to draw something very simple here, pixel by pixel, and a simple mouth, not that bad. Okay, yeah, I think this works fine. And yeah, okay, this should work well. Now take your time to write, to draw anything you want here. Maybe you want to give it a look like this. Okay, so okay, we're going to click here on this green tick to close and save the image, and click again. So the image is here. You notice that the sprite now contains an icon, which is a thumbnail of what we just drew. And also very important, whatever images you see in computers, they're always drawn from the top left. So if you had an image, okay, so imagine there's a square here, and maybe you took a selfie of yourself like this, so that image is going to be drawn from the top left to the bottom right. So things in computers works like this. It is going to draw pixel by pixel from the top left to the bottom right. So the origin of the image is located here. Now, if you want to rotate your sprites in GameMaker and you use this origin, when you rotate, it's going to look a bit strange. So sometimes it is a good practice to move the origin to the center. Okay, and to do this in GameMaker, we just click here on this center button. Okay, and you're going to see a cross here that points in the center of our player. Alright, so this should be it for the sprite. Let's hit OK. Now, sprites, they can't be simply added to the game. You can't rotate the sprites through code. You can't apply physics. You can't collide, because the things that behave like this, the things that actually contain all the game logic, are objects. Okay, so objects contain sprites. That's why we draw a sprite before doing anything else. So let's right click on the objects folder, select create object. Let's maximize this window, and the name of this object is going to be obj_player. And here in the sprite view, we're going to click on this button and select spr_player. Okay, so an object contains a sprite. Okay, so we can just hit OK, and we have an object here that contains the player sprite. And don't worry, we're going to see this in detail in the next lessons. And finally, what if we want to generate a quick build of our game? What if we want to run the game? How are we going to add the player to the screen? To do this, we need to have a room. So rooms in GameMaker are like scenes, states, levels, or maps. There are different names for what rooms are in different game engines. But rooms are like screens which behave, which contains objects inside it and behave somehow. So a main menu is a room. So a menu where you have buttons to click on these buttons and move to other screens is a room. And the game scene, okay, so the game where you have your player and you're going to run the basic mechanics of this game, is a room as well. So let's go ahead and right click on the rooms folder, select create room, maximize this window. Let's name this RM_game. As for the width and height, you can leave these numbers, but I'm going to use 800 by 640 just so it fits in the screen. And speed is how fast your room is going to be processed. So if you leave this as 30, then this room is going to be processed 30 times a second, either by your computer or your cell phone or your smart TV, smart watch, whatever platform your game is running at. This will be the speed. So let's keep 60 here to have the smoothest experience possible. But when you use higher numbers, you have to be very careful with the performance of the game. Okay, sometimes it is wise to keep a speed of 30 or maybe 24, not to sacrifice performance and make the game stutter or lag a little bit. Okay, but since we're going to make something simple, we're going to leave this as 60. Right, now to change the color of this room, we can go to backgrounds and we can click here on this rectangle and mark the black color. Okay, so it looks like this. And finally, to add our player, we can go to the Objects tab. Okay, we just click on it, and if we had multiple objects, we would have to pick what object you wanted. Okay, right now it defaults as player, but still it is important to see that you have to come here where it says object to add with left mouse, click on this button here and select obj underscore player, okay, which is already the case. And to add the player, simply click. Okay, just click anywhere to position your player. We need to add it to the center. And now we can just click on, no, also before that, click on this green tick here to confirm that your room is saved. Okay, you can open it back again. So all we have is a player in the middle. And if we select run the game, let's wait a little bit for the code to be compiled and for the window to open. And there we go. We have a black screen with a white player in the middle. Okay, right now the player doesn't do much, we can't move it yet. So in the next video we're going to learn how to write code to make the player move. See you soon. As I told you before, the things that can move or receive physical logics are objects. So to make the player move, we need to deal with the player object. Let's double click on obj underscore player, and we're going to see this screen here where we have two very important panels. We have the events and we have the actions. And what are those? Events are things that happen at a certain moment of time. So maybe a party or Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's Eve. So things that happen at a certain moment in time. Okay, and actions are the things you're going to do when these events happen. So if you're going to a party, maybe you're going to wear some nice clothes or apply some perfume, whatever you want. So events are things that happen in time, and actions are the things you do. These two concepts are very important because most of what we see in programming works like this. Essentially, it is action and reaction, okay, events and actions. So to make the player move, we need to listen for input event. So inputs are the things that the users of computers or smartphones are issuing their devices. So for example, if I press the left key, then I'm giving a left key press event. Okay, and we need to add events for all of the key presses. So let's start with the right arrow key. To add an event here, you're going to go to the events panel. Let's click here on add event. We're going to select keyboard event and select right. Okay, and you're going to see this little entry here. So if you press the right key, then you're going to do a list of actions. Right now the list of actions is empty, but you have several things that you can use here. Okay, you have several pre-made actions in GameMaker, which is one of the best things of this engine. This is perfect to learn how things work. You can just drag them here and see the changes in the code very quickly. Okay, you can make your objects teleport, you can make them follow a path, you can change the color and sprite just by dragging things here. However, it is interesting for us to understand how code works, because with code, and don't get me wrong, if you use GameMaker's actions, they're going to work just as fine. Okay, and even we have a lesson that talks just about that. But if you use code, you're going to have more freedom to change how your game behaves. Okay, you're going to have more control on how it behaves. So right now we're going to drag this code block here. Okay, so this is the execute code action. You're going to click, drag and drop here in the actions field. Okay, so we drag and drop, and we have a new window here. So this is a text editor where we get to write our code. So to make the player move, we're going to make one simple line. Type speed equals 5. Okay, so what did we do here? The objects in GameMaker, they have things inside them called variables. Okay, and these variables, they are like spaces in your device's memory that store something. Okay, so speed is a handy name that we have in GameMaker that stores the speed on which it's basically how fast your object is going to move. So if speed is 0, then it won't move, and if speed is 5, it would move at a speed of 5, of course. Okay, and that memory normally is not normally, but that memory is internally represented by a big number, for example, like that. And however, it is a bit difficult for us to use this number to change the speed. Okay, we would have to memorize what the speed number is, what the direction is, whatever, what the image angle is. So instead of doing that, we have some handy names that we can use. And this is every programming language, almost every programming language that is widely used nowadays uses this. Okay, you have a good name that you can remember. That equal sign, it's not like you're doing math here. This is not an equation. Okay, it's not like you're saying that, okay, hey, x is 1 plus 3, so x is 4, or maybe 2 plus x equals to y plus 5, and what is x, what is y? No, it doesn't work like that. That equal sign is an assignment operation. So you have the speed space in memory, and you're assigning the number 5 to it. So you are storing the number 5 there. Okay, so it's more or less like this. You have the speed in the memory, you're getting the 5 and storing it there. Okay, this is how this assignment works. And that semicolon in the end is just to tell that this statement is over. You just finished your statement. This is not mandatory in GameMaker. However, other languages, they require this. So it is interesting to have a good practice of using the semicolon. So let's give this a try. Let's click on run the game to see if this is going to work fine. Let's wait for the compilation to be complete. And we have our player here in the middle. If I press the right key, then the player moves. Okay, so this is working good. And one final thing that we're going to add here is a comment. Okay, whenever you start a line with two slashes, you're making a comment. So this is something that is not going to change how your code behaves. This is not even considered by a compiler. Okay, you can write whatever you want here, and this basically won't be used in the game. But this is good for explaining you or other programmers that happen to work in your game to understand whatever you're doing. So even though this one is obvious, let's keep a good practice of writing a few lines here and there to explain whatever is happening. And so essentially we're going to put here move to the right. Okay, if we click this green arrow, we're going to save, and notice that the name of this action here, okay, so we have the right event and we have this piece of code action, just says execute a piece of code. So if we added other pieces of code here, we would have a huge list of lines that just say execute a piece of code. Okay, this doesn't mean a thing. If you happen to look here, you won't know immediately what these pieces of code do. So what you can do is you can open your code. Instead of using two slashes in this first comment line, you use 3 of them. This is still a comment, but now this is going to be used as the title of this piece of code. So it says here move to the right. Okay, so this is much better to understand. Now what happens if we want to move to the left? Okay, let's click on that event. We're going to select keyboard, and then we're going to select left. Okay, let's drag a piece of code here. Let's start by typing move to the left, and we're going to add here speed equals to -5. Okay, let's see what happens. We're going to click on run the game, wait for the code to compile, and after it is, there we go, we have our player. If you press right, it moves to the right. If you press left, it moves to the left. So how did this work? Okay, so imagine in GameMaker you have 2 arrows here. One is pointing down and one is pointing to the left. This is the coordinate system of GameMaker. The arrow that points to the right is the horizontal axis, which is called X, and the one pointing down is the vertical axis, which is called Y. Okay, so whatever positions you deal with in GameMaker is a group of numbers. The first one is the horizontal position, and the second one is the vertical position. So if you're setting the speed to be a positive value, you are making the player move to the right. If you set it as a negative value, you make it move to the left. Okay, so that's why we use speed for. Now, what if we want to move the player up or down? What do we have to do to make this happen? GameMaker contains a very handy variable which is called direction. So the direction is basically this arrow here. Okay, whenever you don't set the direction and the direction starts as 0, okay, so this is the default direction, then there's going to be an arrow that points to the right. Okay, so this is the full direction here. If you set a speed to a positive value, then the player is going to move through that arrow. But if you set it to a negative value, it's going to move opposed to the direction of that arrow. That's why it works like this. So if we want to make the player move up and down, we have to change the direction. So instead of using negative values, it is better to always use positive values for the speed and just change the direction. Things are going to work much easier that way. And how do we do this? Imagine you have a circle around the player. Okay, and that circle is divided into 4 parts. Okay, and these parts, they have numbers assigned to them. So the first part is 0, the second part is 90, the third part is 180, and the last one, actually the fourth part is 270. And once you do a full circle, you're going to be on 360, which is the same as 0. So these are Euler angles. This is so common for representing angles in game making. So 0 degrees is pointed to the right, 90 up, 180 left, 270 down, and 360 is the same as 0. So if we want to move to other directions, we have to set the direction variable to be one of these numbers. So let's do this. Here we are in the left code. So instead of using speed equals to -5, we're going to leave it as 5, but we're going to set direction to be 180, which is an arrow pointing to the left. Okay, so let's close this. Let's go back to the right key. Instead of using speed 5, yes, we're going to keep speed 5, but let's force direction to be 0. Okay, so direction defaults as 0, but if you press the left key, when you press the right key, you have to set the direction to be back to 0, so you have to keep this line here. Now let's make the movement to the upwards and downwards movement. So add a keyboard event, select up. We're going to drag a piece of code. Let's add a title to it, so move upwards, and then direction is going to be 90, and speed is going to be 5. And can you try doing by yourself the movement to the down direction? Pause the video right now and try doing this. Okay, to do this, we just click on Add Event, Keyboard, Down. We drag a piece of code here. Let's add a title, Move Downwards. Direction is going to be 270. And finally, speed is going to be 5. Okay, let's give this a try. Let's click on Run the Game, wait for the code to compile, and our window opens so we can test this out. There we go. If we press right, it moves right, left, left, up, up, down, down. So we can move the player to all directions. Okay, so now 2 little adjustments that we have to do. If the player exits the window from the left, I want it to appear in the right. And also, I want the player to stop moving if I release the key. So let's do these 2 things. You have to go to the player. We're going to use 2 very important events. Let's click on Add Event and select Create. And let's click on Add Event and then select Step, the first one. So these 2 are the most important events in game making. The Create one is called whenever your object is ready to be used. And the Step event is called every time your room is processed. So since the player is in a room which runs at a speed of 60, then the Step event is going to be called 60 times per second. So it is good for making some verifications or maybe some changes to how your object behaves. So in Create, we're going to go to the Move tab here in the Actions panel, and we're going to select this one, Set Friction. Okay, the friction is how fast your object is going to stop. Let's use 0.25 here and press OK. And in Step, we're going to drag this action here, Wrap Screen. You drag and drop it here, and in the direction, we're going to click on this button to select in both directions. Okay, so we didn't write code here because we wanted to do something very specific, and a built-in action of GameMaker already does that for us. So now we click on Run the Game to wait for the code to compile. And after that, we have our window here. And let's move the player. If I release the key, the player smoothly stops moving. And if I try to exit the window at any part of the screen, it just wraps around to the other side. Okay, so we are starting to get there, to get our mechanic working. In the next video, we're going to learn how to make the player change colors. See you soon.